It is just a huge honor for me today to be podcast interviewing Marc Eric Bailey and Dr. James R. Chaffin. I'll start with Marc, who's on the left. Marc Bailey is a graduate of Dickinson College in Carlisle, Pennsylvania. He has been actively engaged in real estate brokerage, development, investment, as well as the creation of several businesses over his career. He has arranged business financing for 36 years and has served health professionals exclusively at Capital for Healthcare, LLC, since the early 1990s. In 2005, he founded Dentcetera-Advisors, LLC, to provide dentists acquiring practices with buyer representation services nationwide. Dr. Chaffin joined Marc in each of these endeavors. In 2009, they founded Dental Recovery Solutions 360 together. Mr. Bailey's endeavors have followed the business trends in dentistry. First, he focused on carefully crafting financing for dentists to excel in practice with Capital 4H Healthcare. It's not the rate, term, or amount of a loan, but the combination thereof which creates the best financing solutions. During the growth years of dentistry pre-2008, it became apparent that practice buyers were not being represented well during a practice purchase. Thus, Dentcetera-Advisors was born to provide buyer representation. And when the economy collapsed in late 2008, it became apparent that Dental Recovery Solutions 360 was required to serve dentists, lenders, landlords, bankruptcy trustees, etc., to save dental practices, professional careers, and prevent abandonment issues. DRS 360 is the only firm in America focused exclusively in dentistry for these services. Mr. Bailey is a widower and blessed father of a teenage daughter and 3 awesome cats. He resides in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, enjoys fine cars, reading, and the beach. And on the right is Dr. James R. Chaffin, a 2004 graduate of Loma Linda University School of Dentistry and a 2008 graduate of LVI. He has owned and operated cosmetic and restorative dental practices right here in my backyard in Peoria, Phoenix, Scottsdale, Santan Valley, Queen Creek, and presently in Glendale as CR Smiles, where he is building a new office. Dr. Chaffin is a talented clinician specializing in implant dentistry, oral sedation, TMD, both cosmetic and restorative dentistry. He's an accomplished entrepreneur, business person, advisor, and the CEO of Dental Recovery Solutions 360, a firm founded in 2009 and devoted to saving dental practices nationwide, and CEO of Dentcetera-Advisors, a national practice advisory firm founded in 2005 and based right here in Phoenix. He is a visionary entrepreneur as to concepts and opportunities. Dr. Chaffin is happily married and resides in Cave Creek, Arizona, where my sister Shelly lives. Shout out to Shelly. With his wife, 2 young sons, and 2 doggies. He enjoys bodybuilding, high-performance cars, movies, and golf. Man, thanks so much, guys, for coming on the show. How are you guys doing?
Awesome. How are you, Howard?
I'm doing very good. But, you know, Marc, even though you're out there in Pennsylvania, you spent a lot of time in Phoenix, Arizona, and James, so have you. And that 2008 crash, I mean, Warren Buffett always says during a recession, when the tide goes back out to the sea, you get to see who's swimming without any pants on. And, man, that was a brutal. What did you guys learn from that 2008? Because, James, the last I heard is that right here in the Valley, what was it? How many practices did you hear went under in 2008?
About 150.
About 150.
About 50 in that 1 year. Yeah.
Was that 1 year 2008 or 2009?
I think it was crossing from the end of 2008 straight into 2009.
Yeah, and
like
when you see 150, I mean, I had dentists in my front room crying, and I mean, it was sad. I mean, it was crying. And in your bio, one of your deals is to prevent abandonment issues. That was a big problem right here in my backyard too, because dentists who went bankrupt. And you know, they were like orthodontists with several hundred patients in the middle of treatment. And thank God one local orthodontist was so damn smart. He was a brand new startup, and he just said, I'll finish all your cases, no money. And it built so much goodwill. He had instant word of mouth referral. He had instant goodwill with all the referring dentists, everybody. I mean, when I heard that, I got verklempt. I mean, I thought he was the sweetest guy in the world. Of course, he's Canadian, so they're all sweet up there. You know, so what lessons did you guys learn from 2008? And how does that 2008 losing 150 practices right here in our backyard, what does that make you more passionate about today?
Go ahead, James.
I'm really passionate about people that get into a rough situation, just making sure that they have other opportunities than they never knew about. I mean, I meet time and time, client after client that is upside down in their practices. Unsecured lenders up through the eyeballs, secured lenders up through the eyeballs, take high-risk debts out, behind in taxes, and they don't have a clue how to get out of the situation in the right manner. I mean, they're just sitting there in a pool and they can't swim. And that's where we come in, That's what I'm passionate about, because I think we do a lot of good service on saving dental practice.
So you graduated in Loma Linda in 2004?
Yes.
And this is 2017. It's a tougher market in 2017 coming out of school than 2004. I mean, I don't know what your student loan debt was, but mine in 1987 was 87 grand. But I see we got 2 dental schools in our backyard here. We got one in Mesa, AT Still, and we got one in Glendale where you practice, Midwestern. Midwestern's graduating 150 a year. AT Still, I think, is 75 or 80. And man, they're coming out 350. Some of them are $500,000 in debt. Then they go buy a practice for $750, and you're talking to a baby, and they're $1 million in debt, and they don't even know what they're doing.
Yeah, what is the interest rate anyway now when they're coming out of school? I met some young graduate that was interviewing with me. They had $3,000 a month student debt, payments, and that's like, I mean, I don't know what his interest rate was, but I'm like, how the heck do you afford that when you take a look at coming out of school? Limited production ability. He comes into a practice, he's probably only going to make about 8 to 10 grand a month from his own skill level. And then you have to top in his payments, and then if he wants to go out and buy a practice, if he doesn't choose the right practice, I mean, it's just that there's just a lot of debt, and it's terrible to see the young graduates. I mean, when I got out of school, I refinanced my student debt into like a 1.25 interest rate. I mean, not a big deal. But I see these kids. Do you know what it is now?
Well, I mean, they got all kinds of different loans.
Yeah.
I mean, when they're $350,000 in debt, they owe money to 3 or 4 different plans, anywhere from good to miserable interest rates.
Yeah. So I mean, we see that time and time again from a personal perspective, and then you top on a business perspective. We have clients that financed super scratches or startups and spend $800,000 on a brand new office to open their doors, and they don't have enough working capital to be successful. They don't have a business background to be successful.
But does that $800,000 Taj Mahal include the land and building, or is that a rental?
We're usually talking about a rental. I mean, the last scratch practice that we did was, and actually one of them was in Phoenix here. The gentleman spent about almost $700,000 on equipment, TIs, the Taj Mahal, and he didn't have the patience. And I'm like, oh, there's smarter ways to do that, and there's smarter ways not to. We have clients that have bought in practices that didn't cash flow like, their representation showed them. They couldn't support the debt service, and then they start, getting into problems. We have doctors that don't know how to manage their business from a ratio point of view on their P&Ls that start making bad decisions, after bad decision, and then they get themselves in this train wreck of unsecured and secured debt, and they don't know what to do.
Well, that's the one thing I try to preach on every episode is that, when we got out of school, you could make so many bad mistakes coming out of school and still make it. You could go to bad demographic area, too many dentists. You could do so many things wrong 30 years ago and still kick butt. Today, with that kind of debt, you better not make many more mistakes after that. When you walk out of dental school, I hope your first 3 to 5 decisions are an A. And if you walk out of school with that much debt and you start making some C, D, and F decisions,
Exactly. Well, we've had cases, and I like to talk about my local cases, but every decision, can create a problem. So, I had a doctor that had a wonderful practice, and then he bought a second practice that almost took him down. One little domino effect, and the whole thing is gone. So you're right. I mean, every decision is exactly what you need.
The truth is, they see a dentist named Rick Workman out in the middle of little Effingham, Illinois, and just opened his 800th offices, and they see Stephen Thorne, whose dad is a dentist. He's not a dentist, and he owns like 350. So they just see this massive evidence that this can be done. They just don't realize the skill involved.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
In that case, James was referring to, the individual had a certain type of practice and a certain demographic. The second one was entirely different, and it was on a side street with no visibility. Went in and financed it, and my God, after the second year realized that he had to put money in every month to keep it alive. And fortunately, we were able to come into that situation, restructure his financing, and with an assistance of a realtor, get rid of the building in the second location. And suddenly, not only did he repay that debt in a very short period of time, but he doesn't have to worry about a second location at all.
Right. I always say when you got one location, your problems are a barking Doberman in one corner and a barking Rottweiler in another one. And then when you open up a second office, those turn into Godzilla and King Kong. And I see one of the most surefire ways to go bankrupt is expanding from the second to the third location. I see more bankruptcies on that move because they just realize that they don't have any systems. They don't have a management team. They didn't have a concept. So.
That particular case that he's talking about, we actually got the case. It was about 3 weeks before foreclosure of the building, and they were taking everything from him. And this doctor got some words of wisdom from another company that doesn't deal with dentistry, and they told him just stop paying your bills in that location. I don't know what their plan of strategy was, but we got it, and we had to save this guy within a period of 3 weeks. Got to come up with a solution to be able to get him on the right track. So that's where Dr. Srissi was born. A little history with Marc here. Actually, he was my mentor and guider when I first graduated in 2004. He financed Scalpel for Healthcare, financed my first practice, and and that's when we met, and we had a good relationship for the last 15 years, something like that. I mean, it's been a wonderful experience. But he taught me a lot when I bought my first practice, and I asked him. I said, "Hey, will you mentor me when it comes to cash flow and business?" So I actually worked for Marc for a long period of time, learning and growing and watching him give advice to doctors, also telling doctors no. What bank tells somebody no? And he's telling doctors, you do not buy this. This is not what you think it is. And ultimately seeking advice. And that's a little of a history when it comes to Marc.
Marc, what did you learn from the 2008 meltdown? The reason I keep asking is, I'm 55, and it just seems like every 10 years another economic correction takes place. And the last one was 2008. Now it's 2017. It's November. I mean, we're almost going into 10 years since the last one, and I'm already starting to smell trouble. One of the things I've noticed, I mean, besides the stock market's appreciated way too much, the investment decisions are made by humans and they're irrational. So their investment bets are irrational. That's why there's always going to be a cycle. Maybe when they invent the singularity and artificial intelligence, maybe humans won't make so many irrational decisions. But I start seeing the first things to go. Humans are never going to walk away from their car payment, their cell phone payment, and their house. But they start giving up things like, I'm not going to go out and eat lunch out anymore. I'm going to take a lunch. And I'm not going to go get mani-pedis at the spa. And right here in Phoenix, the biggest, sweetest day spa for all the rich women is Dolce. And they just closed their doors. And then one of the greatest lunch restaurants is Zite Haas. And they just closed down 3 locations. And in 2008, my buddy, the Applebee's right across the street, right up the street from me, went under. And my buddy Tom Mattern got a smoking hot deal on the bankrupt. But when I start seeing people not spending on wants, they're going to cling to their needs. But when they stop spending on their wants, I start smelling market tops.
Well, that's what many people say. If you follow Howard Dent, for example, and he's an economist who functions based on demographics. He has researched the world demographics for the last 600 years, and the trends always follow suit. So whether it's Europe, whether it's here, whether it's Asia, the same trends are always following. So he too says that in a very short period of time, there's going to be an adjustment made in the stock market. We'll have to see how that goes, but it can only grow so high for so long before an adjustment will occur. When we started with Capital for Healthcare years ago, many of those people that came to me that were healthcare professionals were looking to buy real estate. They were like maybe buying a second home or an investment property. And I would ask, what do you do? Oh, I'm a dentist, I'm a doctor, I'm a veterinarian. And they would complain about, back in the 80s, late 80s, you had your first adjustment with healthcare insurance, and they were just growing acclimated to that. And they said, well, we can't get financing to support what we're doing. And back then it was entirely different. I mean, today we have so many great practice solutions groups from B of A, Wells Fargo, all the big guys and SBA lenders and everything. But back then it was really community bank financing, and they didn't understand a healthcare practice. So when people would go and they would try to get a loan, they never were provided with sufficient working capital. So if it was a startup, by the time you reached the point that maybe you were close to profitability, you were out of working capital and you couldn't suffice as to any of your loan payments. So, you see that trend, and we see now, of course, funding has changed dramatically again with all the different online services and so many different merchant cash advance companies where people say, oh my God, this is fabulous, Howard. I went online, I filled out a 5-minute application, and a day later, they sent me 50 grand. Yes, but the monthly payments are not monthly payments. They're daily debits from your bank account. So you better stay on that treadmill and do a lot of dentistry, because every day they're going to debit your account for 500, 800, 2,000, whatever the case might be. And that's what James and I see so much of, is it's not that people have grown their practice to a point and go to the local bank for a line of credit or go to a working capital lender for a working capital line. They can't get that anymore because they're in such dire straits with their own practice finances and their personal finances that they figure, I heard on the radio on Sirius this morning, I can get this program, and it'll take a day to be approved and funded. So many people are going that route, and suddenly they call us and say, I can't make ends meet.
So who's your typical client? Who's listening to you right now on an hour commute to work, and who's your ideal client? I mean, is it talk to that dentist right now?
Right. Well, for me, in Capital for Healthcare, my preference was always the young dentist, the dentist coming out of school who's not made any mistakes yet.
Hey, a young dentist is 55. 55 is a
Howard,
young dentist.
Don't forget, in the late 1980s and 1990s and most of the last 10 years, there was no book called The Business of Dentistry by Dr. Howard Farran. So they didn't have that guide. They graduated, they weren't taught about business in dental school, and suddenly they were trying to determine, do I go to work for someone who may not have the skills that I do or may not have the current skills that I do, or do I start a practice or buy an existing practice? Many of the people that I financed over the years buy an existing practice. I generally feel that if we do our job right and we do the due diligence with them and negotiate the best deals with them, that the financing is going to enable them when they buy an existing practice to survive and do well. Startup, I always say, is like taking a piece of pie, a big full pie, and saying, okay, we're going to take a little bit from each practice in that market share in order to create our market share. It may work, it may not work. And as you know, as we talked about in 08 and 09, so many practices failed that were startups. Acquisitions did as well, but I think there were more startups that failed than anything else.
What I noticed in the backyard was there were three variables that I saw. It was the young kid who came out of school and did a scratch startup from scratch.
Right.
And they thought they were going to do a big direct mail campaign and get a Facebook page, and they'd have patients, and the patients didn't materialize. The second group, and a lot of these were my friends, they were older guys like me, but they focused on just cosmetics, and they couldn't extract a tooth, they couldn't do a molar root canal, they can't make a partial or a denture. And they had lost their skill set down to bleaching, bonding, and veneers, and they were all up in North Scottsdale, and all they had been doing for years was people would come in, they'd give them 25 to 50 grand. They'd take everything out of their teeth and replace it with porcelain and empress and glass, and those patients just disappeared. And then
Absolutely.
the third variable was demographics. It didn't hurt anybody in Maricopa and Eloy and out there in the suburbs and the rural. It was that North Scottsdale cluster
Right.
where everybody went chasing all the rich people. And rich people, the difference between rich people and poor people is a poor man and their money always part, and rich people don't part with their money. That's why they're rich, and they
That's so
start
true.
cutting back on Dolce salons and getting veneers and all that kind of stuff. And there's bad times. Like right now in Phoenix, that's another variable that scared me. Where I live, there's been about 13 to 15 homes on the market in the over the $1 million home market. Now there's 38 and none of them are selling. I mean, so right now homes in the valley between, over $1 million is pretty much illiquid, which again reinforces the smart, there's 38 homes for sale because a lot of smart, rich people are thinking, you know what, I don't want to have $1 million tied up in a house. I want to go liquid, So anyway, so you were talking about by the way, I just retweeted. My homies follow me on Twitter. Thanks for following me. I just retweeted your tweet so they can find you at C4H is that underscore 360?
Yes, sir.
CH4 underscore 360. And that's what you're talking about, capital for healthcare. Is that what you're most passionate about now, or?
Well, today, it's the combination really of all three of those entities, but most of our time is spent with those people, that have made mistakes or found themselves in a bind. We recently took over the management of 6 dental practices in Ohio, where the individual had just the last thing he did was merchant cash advances, and it killed him. And stabilizing those practices, growing them to the next level, and then releasing them back into the market with a doctor that, whether it's a DSO or a doctor that would come in and buy each of those practices to operate. It's difficult. We see so many different things on a daily basis. James will call me. We have since we started that relationship back in 2004, we have a standing call every day, except for weekends. But every day we speak between 10:15 and 11:15. And throughout the day, James will call and say, hey, we had another call and this guy needs this or this lady needs that, or what are we going to do? And he has all these different systems and techniques and concepts down pat to save people.
We see all sorts of different clients, Farran. I mean, I see acquisitions. I have a new client from New Jersey that good practice, $900,000 gross. His rent's proportional. Some of the stuff is pretty proportional from his staff salaries and, from his business model. He started just basically not doing taxes correctly. And over 10 years, he accumulated $1 million of taxes. Started taking high-risk loans. Boom, 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 boom. And his practice is about to be seized. So we're involved. We're going to save the practice, get it out of harm's way, and restructure this gentleman so he can move on with his life. But the practice we're going to be able to save so it doesn't get shut down. I have clients that I had one here since I'm a local guy, and we have practices all over the country. I had one here on Via Linda and Shea in Scottsdale, $1.2 million. You just crossed into $1.2 million in December, and this was a last year deal. He walked away from his practice, just shut the door. I got called actually on that case by a landlord group called Whitestone REIT, which is a big company. They called us in and said, we have a problem. The guy abandoned his patients. Our company went in. We restarted the practice, got the team back, the original team, negotiated all the landlords and the leases and all the UCCs. We're able to come to terms, and we put it back on the market, and we released that practice to another doctor and it's continuing. So these are the kind of cases, whether it's we do scratches where they've overbuilt to even regular acquisitions. And those high-risk loans that Marc's talking about is definitely a common denominator that we see quite often. So, what our job is to do is to give another alternative to the dentist that's stuck by himself as a solo practitioner, have all these things coming at him, doesn't know what to do, and he's drowning. And we kind of save them. And that's our strategy, that's our plan, and we've been doing it often. We're pretty busy, unfortunately. But I think we do a good service. by protecting doctors and giving them another alternative, as well as their teams. The teams get to go on, because what I always like to say to my doctors when the doctors hire us, is you got a good practice, but it's not good for you right now. It's going to be good for another owner, but you've just, your time is done. So we always structure an exit plan that includes, refis, restructures, debt clearances, and we work with their attorneys as well to give them a plan structure from A to Z, start to finish. So,
I want for the kids that are dental school, they don't, I doubt they understand the severity of patient abandonment. I mean, state boards, there's a couple things they really don't like. And besides substance abuse, it's patient abandonment. Did that dentist, did he lose his license for that, or did he get in trouble with the board?
We caught it right in the nick of time for 4 weeks. So what my job on that particular case is I went in as the dentist and I grabbed those patient charts, contacted them all, got it restarted so there wouldn't be. So we prevented in that case.
But explain to the kids why what patient abandonment is and why is that so bad.
With this gentleman, he's in the middle of Crown and Bridge and extractions, and is running a basically an $80,000 to $100,000 a month practice, in production collections. Lots of patients running through that. And when he shut his doors and didn't tell anybody where he's going, what to do, didn't even refer it out to another dentist. These patients are calling. They have insurance checks coming in. They have maybe treatment that are right in the midst. And you're basically abandoning a ton of regular clients that, are normal people. You imagine if you just spent, $4,000 getting ready for a case and you spend all your money and the doctor's getting a denture and you're about to have some implants and you're getting that immediate denture started and ready, and then you walk in and no one's around. Well, you just spent your last dime of your entire life, in some cases, because people are on budgets, and this doctor just beelined it. That's heartbreaking.
Yeah, and it's so tough because I know the psyches from the ones that I've gone through it with, and they're really depressed. They're in a bad frame of mind. I mean, they're really depressed, and they just can't take it anymore. And you got to be careful because dentists. I mean, since I've been here for 30 years, every year in the Valley, 1, 2, or 3 dentists kills himself. So a lot of these patient management, the board's got to realize, well, that's a hell of a lot better than Doc going home and killing himself. But you gotta get clear. And the one thing I've noticed that's so demographically different in dentistry, just like TMJ and migraines, is that you talk to practice management consultants and with millennials, they say that 2/3 to 80% of their clients are females. That's why dentists think females have more headaches and migraines than men, when the epidemiologists say it's not true. It's because women go get help. They raise their hand. And so many men, they just don't get help. And I've said to so many dentists, why haven't you had a consultant? Why don't you get help? Why don't you have, but they're a man. I mean, I can remember when I was a little boy, me and my 5 sisters, Dad drove us all the way from Wichita, Kansas to Disneyland, and he got so damn lost in LA, but he wouldn't ask for help. It was the only time I ever saw my mom have a meltdown, if you don't pull over that filling station right now, she almost was going to kill him. But men just don't get help until they just walk out of their office and lock their doors. And I just think of so many dentists who practice 10, 20, 30, 40 years. And if they just would have had one consultant ever, or one every 5 or 10 years, their life would have been so much easier. They would have made so much more money. Talk to that dentist out there who needs help. It's probably going to be a man. The women are already calling. Talk to that man. He might think it's a hopeless situation because he's always going to think, well, you don't understand. My situation's different. Who's your perfect client? Who's listening to you right now? And
the perfect client for us, I mean, I like to catch things before they go into the courts. I mean, we work both sides of the fence. I've worked for trustees. Our companies work for attorneys that represent trustees. Our company's been involved with fraudulent mergers that brokers have done. Brokers we work for brokers too. They usually call us and say, we have an upside down practice. This guy wants to sell, but the value, what he owes, is not worth it. We don't know what to do. So those guys usually just walk away. You know, the brokers now are starting to realize that we're here. We can negotiate things out in the best interest of the doctor. There's two sides to what we do. The first side is the business side, but it's also the personal side. So, you know, usually their clients have both debts. They have the secure debts, but a lot of these loans have their personal attached to them. So they have homes. You know, I'm dealing with a client out in South Carolina that's got a practice that we're going to be releasing. He's going into BK, but we want to protect his house. You know, that's his life. He's 70 years old, you know. So what we like to do is strategize the release of a practice from business point, but everything we're releasing will roll back into the personal side. So we actually strategize both levels. You know, I mean, especially with these upside down practices. You know, they bought a practice 2 years ago for $800,000. It's been declining revenue trend, and now it's only worth $400,000. Well, they're upside down $400,000, just like a home. Well, what do you do? And then they're like, well, I can't grow it back up. I have all this debt, and they tend to just dig themselves deeper. So we, you know, one thing we do, we had a call a couple months back where the doctor was, oh my God, I'm getting my unsecured. And for the young doctors, when I say unsecured, it means like your lab bills. And, you know, these guys are not secured on your practice. So your labs, your supply companies, this guy was basically behind on those bills. And he was about to borrow a ton of money from a high-risk lender. Well, thank God he called us, because we were able to restructure all those unsecured bills in a payment, you know, that was based on his cash flow that would work. We actually restructured it 50% of what he owed. So we actually did a reduction on that, and that was all this guy's problem. You know, we get clients to where they're a little bit more, where we can, one step above, where we look at it and we're like, you know, we have some problems here, but if we restructure some things, maybe we can refinance the thing and put you on a better path, a plan of attack, you know, better future. Then the next escalation above that is the guys that they owe their unsecured labs and supplies and all the people on your P&L $200,000-300,000 in debt. Then they owe B of A or Wells Fargo, whatever. You know, they're upside down in their practice, $200,000-300,000, and you know the debt starts compounding. So you know, in those kind of cases, we like to catch it before it goes into the court system, because at that point we can save the practice. We can take the practice, protect the practice, and give it a pathway that is acceptable to all lenders, to where the practice can be released, and then we can deal with the client with the aftermath.
Well, if someone wants to talk to you about their current nightmare, what's the best way to contact you?
Email Marc. You can email us at doctors360, doctors, drs-360.com.
What's the email?
DS1.
Well, you could either do Marc at MARK at drs-360.com, or James has a cool email address. It's jamesdds1 at drs-360.com. We also have a toll-free line, and we are available 24/7 in order to speak to people and understand what they have going on in their lives and how we can help them. And that's 844-377-3601.
Really? 844 is toll-free?
Yes, it is.
I never even knew that. 844-3. Yeah, I don't have any toll-free numbers. I get dentists that text me or they they email me, howard@dentaltown.com, and say, I need to ask you a question. Do you have a toll-free number? And I'm just like, really? Really? You want me to pay for the phone call and then answer your question? I mean, it's like, God. I just replied.
We have so many people that, for somehow, some way, they find out our cell phones, and that's fine, and they'll call us or text us on the cell phone, and that's how the conversation begins.
Another question that young dentists are hearing on Dental Town is they go to buy a practice, and some of the big national firms say, no, you don't each side have a broker. You want dual representation. If each side has a broker, they're going to go back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, and you're never going to get anything done. So you want to find a broker that's going to represent the buyer and the seller, so we'll just get her done. Is that good advice? Is dual representation one broker for both sides? Do you think that's a good deal, or do you think that's not a good idea?
I don't like it personally. When I was an active realtor, I happened to be in Hawaii in 1993 when the National Association of Realtors rewrote the Code of Ethics in order to provide for not just a seller's agent, but a buyer's agent, dual agency, or a facilitator. And you could just imagine, God forbid, you're in a car accident and you're the plaintiff and the defendant, you both hire the same lawyer. No matter how good that lawyer is, and no matter how hard that lawyer tries to be 100% unbiased towards you or towards the other party, at some point, it's just not going to work out. And that's the reason in the real estate industry where they created buyer's agents to represent buyers and seller's agents to represent sellers. Of course, when you represent a seller, you're supposed to be loyal and obedient to that client. And, if they tell you something in confidence, you're not supposed to share it with every party. Now, obviously, you have to be fair. You always have to be good and fair to both parties, but you still represent that one party. So when Dentcetera was created, when James purchased his first practice, he was represented by a dual agent. And there were a couple of things that happened almost immediately. One day I couldn't reach him on the cell phone, and he was already doing his transition pre-closing at the practice. So I called the practice, and the phone number rang, and the voicemail picked up, and it said, "Come visit us at our new location at blankety blank." And I'm thinking, oh my God, there's all the goodwill going right out the door. So we corrected that. And then 2 or 3 weeks later, he closed. The seller almost immediately started doing direct mails to not only the existing patient base from the practice James purchased, but for the entire zip code there. And then the next step was that James had a scenario where people would come in and they would say, I want to finish the case I started to do last year. And they would call for a pre-cert, and the insurance company would say, oh, we paid that case in full last year. And maybe 2 out of 4 crowns have been completed. Well, brought in a forensic accounting firm, and they ultimately agreed to a $200,000 plus adjustment. And the dentist that was involved there from the seller side lost his license for a couple of years. But when I looked at that and I said, oh my God, from a lender's perspective, there was no one there that really looked into all these details. And obviously, like the norm was at that time, we're going back to 2004, buyers and sellers used the same practice broker. And there was nothing even thought of about it. So Dentcetera was created from the perspective of representing buyers. Not in doing any startups, that's not my forte. It was always from a matter of an acquisition. If you're buying a practice, I want to know everything about that practice. James joined in right away, and he brought, of course, so much knowledge in the way from school and just having a great business mind as to what we needed to look at clinically. Was the practice doing a lot of perio? Was the practice doing a lot of hygiene? Where were the flaws and how we can make those flaws opportunities? But we never, ever look at an acquisition and say to you, hey, Howard, if you buy this practice, you should be able to do boop, 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 boop. We don't work on transactions projection based. You have to look at an acquisition and say, this practice works for me right now, and I can pay my professional expenses as well as my personal expenses and have a good life. If anything magically improves above and beyond that, well, that's great. But if you know that you're solid at that very beginning with what you're looking at, that's the best way. So that was really Dentcetera, trying to take that buyer and protect the buyer. Now, of course, Dentcetera has grown, and I know you know Christine Cracchiola. She's a partner in Dentcetera. She joined us in 2009. She's our chief counsel, and she's involved in every transaction from beginning to end. Christine Farrakis, her name is Christine Cracchiola. Cracchiolo.
And she's an attorney here in Phoenix that does practice transitions?
Yes, of course. Her father was John Goodson.
Have her come by my home and for me and Ryan to do a podcast.
I'll do that. Absolutely.
I mean, I generally don't allow lawyers to come into my house, but I'll make an exception. By the way, that website is, so was that a play on et cetera, Dentcetera?
Absolutely. Dental, etc. Dentcetera.
Yeah, I love the name. Dentcetera-Advisors.com. And I just retweeted their last tweet if you're trying to find them. They're at Dentcetera-ADV. At Dentcetera-ADV. Buy, sell, finance, transition, marketed dental practice with us. New graduates, associates, and long-term dental practice owners all flourish with us. When you were talking about that 6 offices in Ohio, as an exit strategy, is it pretty easy just to sell those to a DSO? I mean, is that something where a big Heartland would come in and say, we'll take it over? Or let's say your practice is going down. Are DSOs still doing mostly roll-ups and buying practices, or are they starting to do more de novos where they just open their own from scratch? Are they a good exit strategy?
We've seen both scenarios, and we've had DSOs that were interested in our practices in Ohio and in other places. But again, they're looking for a practice that doesn't have flaws. Sometimes that practice may have a flaw. Maybe it's above and beyond the financials of the practice, but maybe it needs a new build out or it needs new equipment. Well, that's not something that a DSO typically wants to do. They want to come in, want to see the financials. They would like the seller to remain long term or short term, and be able to grow that practice as part of their business model. James works frequently with DSOs. James, would you like to comment?
Yeah, they always have their each one has their different model of what they look for, and when they put it in the category, they're usually buying for top dollar. Some get cute and want to offer half with this, and we'll give you half up front, and then with the doctor. But generally speaking, for Doctors 360 practices that we have. That mostly regular doctors buy our practices. I mean, we have a few that want, but they just typically don't want the work, And quite frankly, I was saying, is a lot of our practices are great practices. I mean, they're absolutely fantastic. They're good for a new person, and they're always sold for a fraction of what a normal practice transition brokerage firm would be, because our mission is not selling it for top dollar. Our mission is saying, hey, this is reasonable. The new buyer is going to get into a great situation. It's going to roll perfectly, and life is good. So most of these situations, actually, the structure of the practice is doing well. They may just have mismanaged some of the ratios. Like, we had one practice that rent was about $2,200. No big deal. Okay, you're like, all right, for 10-op practice, I'm good. $95,000 collections. All right, supply bill, pretty proportionate. It's about 6%, rather than have it about 5%. And then you're looking at it and you're going, oh my God, payroll's $48,000. Well, okay. Well, I mean, that's the way he ran it.
Does that include the dentist and dental associates, or is this just a single dentist and that's just the staff?
That was just the staff. And I'm like, oh man.
That was the staff, and then we had to add about $24,000 in dental fees for the month. So I mean, you're sitting there, and I'm doing the books, and I'm like choking myself because I'm saying, oh my God, this has to be rebuilt. We got to redo this schedule because it just doesn't work. So James got involved, and he had made all the necessary adjustments, and now the practice is reaching the point where it is going to be profitable. And that's part of what we do when we recover our practices. We evaluate every aspect of the practice, stabilize the practice. In some cases, we replace dentists or staff, and then, of course, grow the practice. And once we're at that growth mode, we'll either retain or flip the practice. And James makes all of those adjustments very carefully.
So what was his labor percent? What was his labor percent, and what percent do you like labor to be at?
Mark?
I mean, if he was doing $48,000 in payroll.
Yeah, I like it about, when I set a low budget of a practice, I like to set it at 30% on a low budget. So, if the practice does generally, between 80 to 95 consistently, I will always set my payroll the lowest. So I'm like looking at a 12-month spread. I'll say the lowest month they've ever done is $80,000. I'll set 30% budget at that mark. And then so every month of the year, we're under 30% and we're good to go. So when I said, I like to set a low budget.
But what was that guy's labor at?
Well, out of the $95,000 general monthly income, labor, including docs, was $75,000.
Labor, including docs. So what was labor minus the doctor?
Labor would be 57.
Yeah, you know, the CEOs of DSOs that I've podcast interviewed have told me they're what they don't like and they're staying away from is they go in there and there's a bunch of legacy staff that are massively overpaid. Labor's 30 to 40%, and they're gonna have to go in there and buy that and then go fire all these goodwill people that have been there forever and replace them with half the price. And or because if you go in there and adjust down their pay, then their morale is horrible. And so you know they want to buy a practice where the staff and doctor stays, and they just say it's cheaper to do a de novo and run it at a loss till it breaks even than it is to go in there with labor 30 to 40% and deal with all those headaches.
Yeah, we usually correct a lot of the situations before it's usually sold. It's like, but a lot of our clients are doctors that we, you know, as I was saying, we work both sides of the fence. We've worked for courts. We've worked for attorneys representing trustees. I've worked for B of A, Wells Fargo. We're the main referral source. I like working for doctors because, like for example, we're in Arizona, so we'll talk about an Arizona case. I had a doctor in Kingman. About a $700,000 practice. The guy was in debt. Good practice. We needed some corrections from a business plan, but his main goal was to protect his team. So we structured where we were able to protect his practice. We were able to get the practice into a new owner. The new owner wanted to keep him, so he was allowed to keep his job, and we protect his team. So right now, currently, the doctor has all his debts cleared. He's in his original practice that he's been working for 10 years, and he now has a partner that's running it, and he's making money as a dentist. And we cleared all the rest of the debts. If we didn't catch that, probably 8 weeks later, probably about 8 weeks later, people would have been filing judgments, and things would have been chaotic. So in that situation, a lot of our clients are actually the doctors that want to stay in their existing practice. So in those kind of situations, we love really good because it's a nice transition to a new owner from goodwill and that kind of thing. So those are the DSOs do like.
We know you and I are in Phoenix, and Kingman is a rural town. Last I heard, 56% of Americans are urban, where I think 2 out of 3 dentists practice, and the other 44% are rural, where the other 1 out of 3. Do you talk to these young kids? Do you think demographics matter?
Yes, I do. I mean, I'm a big fan of acquisitions as long as you do it right. You know, not based on projected and buying it for. And I see all these brokers, and I've had contacts. I mean, I know all the brokers in this state, and I deal with brokers nationwide. They're always pushing that.
You said the brokers are always pushing what?
The limit, on what they can sell. They're maxing out that cap. If B of A can, they won't do a loan. What is it now, Marc? Is it 1.2 to 1 ratio?
Well, they use that, and they're looking for the higher ratio possible, but they're typically 1.25 to 1.35.
So
that's the size of their loan.
Sale price.
No, that would be a debt service coverage. So if you had $100,000, let's say, in debt payments for a year, that would mean that you would have 125 to 135 available as net cash flow to pay your debt. And obviously, the higher that ratio becomes, sometimes when we represent buyers and look for acquisitions, we love to find those practices that will operate at a 1.69, 1.79 ratio because there's less chance for error. And if you make an error, you have so much additional cash flow that you're going to be able to survive it.
So, I mean, that's what I always think is important when I talk to young graduates. I mean, my second practice that I purchased 60 days out of school was $1.4 million, but the debt service coverage was what, 3 to 1?
3 to 1 was
even
fabulous.
Though I was a little bit naive, I knew that I'd have to be a real idiot to mess this practice up because there was a lot of profitability. Even if I dropped 10, 15%, I'm still able to cover my debt service and pay myself and pay my loan back. So I'm pretty safe. When these guys, and I see a lot of it, they're sold on projections. Maybe the bank just said, "Oh, yeah, we'll accept that." And when they buy it, it's so tight right off the bat, where one hiccup, they're not getting paid. and then it just, creeps it. So they buy something that's just so tight. So I've talked to brokers. I'm like, hey, why don't you drop the price, and from here to here, it will sell faster, and it'll be a good buy for the buyer, but also it's a good sale for the doctor that's selling as well. Or you just keep it for a year on the market. That's why I like a lot of Dr. 360 practices, or even, quite frankly, our normal acquisitions. When we sell a practice for a dentist, we usually don't keep a practice for more than 30 to 60 days. Our clients know this is what the value is. It's easily financeable. We find a buyer that's a good fit, and boom, it's gone. We don't play that, pushing that envelope to where we're maxing it out. So that's not really good for the success of the future of the practice.
Right. What James is saying is, there's an important part of what James is saying. I don't want anyone to be confused by it. Is that if we represent a seller, obviously we're looking for the highest and best use and the highest best return for their practice. But there's a difference between what is that legitimate value for that practice or some magic number above that. So it has to work. When we look at everything, not only do we pre-qualify buyers, but we pre-qualify the practice that we're listing for sale to make sure that it will qualify for financing. For someone who is qualified, that they'll be able to obtain the maximum financing as well. So it's, there's a couple of extra steps. We do, of course, in DRS 360, we also do equipment valuations for banks, for lawyers, bankruptcy trustees, and also for clients and dental clients. We also do practice valuations as well. So we try to, be in every proper place to make sure that we make the right decisions with the client.
So that's your third website. It's doctors-360.com. Dental Recovery Solutions 360 is a top dental practice solutions group in the United States. If your dental practice is worth less than overall debt, accounts payable are 90 days plus late, negative cash flow, contact DRS 360. We save dental practices every day nationwide. And that Twitter is at DRS_360. And how come Marc's got his beautiful face on that and not James? Was it a coin toss, or was it just deemed that Marc was more handsome than James? How did that play
James
out?
has a separate one that's called at Dental Repos.
My gosh, I'm a big Twitter fan, and you know why? Because Twitter and LinkedIn, LinkedIn got bought by Microsoft, and Twitter went public at 40, and they're down to 20, and I'm sure they're headed to 10 or 5, because if you post a tweet on Twitter or LinkedIn, it goes to all your followers. You post a post on Facebook, they won't push it out unless you boost the post and give them money. So if you're giving your social media platform money, why would you do that if there's social media platforms that are don't cost money, which is Twitter and LinkedIn? The other thing about LinkedIn, these dentists, they spend all this time on Facebook, but they always have to give money to boost their post. If they did the same, if they built up the LinkedIn follower, number one, everybody on LinkedIn has money or dental insurance. They all have jobs. Sure. I mean, that's why Microsoft bought it, because they said, my God, there's a gazillion people there, and they all have college degrees and great jobs. Look at the people following on Facebook. How many of them are biker chicks, that don't have, that don't have any money? And so dentists post all this stuff on Facebook and then spend money. And I'll rest my case on Twitter. That's why Trump is the president. Because at night, during the evening news, only 1 million are watching CNN, only 3 million are watching Fox, and he had 6 million Twitter followers that he could tweet from 3 in the morning to 10 at night, and he just went direct, man. He literally disintermediated the middleman. And, and then also, so congratulations, you guys, for having 4 Twitter accounts. And I suppose, are you guys big on LinkedIn too?
Yes.
Yeah, that is amazing. I want to ask you another question. Socrates said we only have 2 emotions, fear and greed. There's a ton of fear out there with these dentists about these DSOs. What do you think of the health of the DSO market? They claim they have 12% of the dentists working for them. And when I say DSO, I'm not talking about a dentist who has 2 locations or 3 locations. I'm talking about your 35 major players who have 12% of the dentists. They claim they do 19% of America's dentistry. The red flags are they can't go public. You know, they got too much debt. They've bought their earnings. So every time they buy $1 million practice, they got $1 million in sales, but they got $1 million more in debt. So as they've built these monsters, they've built debt sheets that would just make me cringe. But what do you think of the DSOs? They're every time I talk to one of those guys, podcast them, they think, 10 years they'll have a third to half the market, and that they're the greatest thing since sliced bread. How would you grade the health of them, since you deal with dental disasters and dental recoveries? And plus, Marc and I are old enough to remember, I don't know if that when we got out of school, Orthodontic Centers of America was publicly traded on the New York Stock Exchange, or a dozen on NASDAQ. Every one of them imploded. Wall Street will never forget it. None of those 35 DSOs could go public tomorrow on NASDAQ. I mean, they just could. Snapchat could, and that thing was a joke. Twitter could go public, and that was a joke. But these guys can't go public. They got amazing debt. I've already been to this rodeo before 30 years ago and watched them all implode. What do you think is the status of DSOs? What is their talk about what your thoughts are on the DSOs?
We've actually had some DSOs contact us to try to refinance different sections of their group. Like we had one DSO that has like 30 offices in Houston, and they're just hemorrhaging debt. And they're like, remember that one we evaluated, Marc?
Absolutely.
Oh my Lord, we're talking about crazy debt, not as profitable as you think. I would, as a personal business owner, I would just go out of my mind if I had that much debt. I mean, they buy themselves into the category, and when these young doctors get swooped into, hey, I'm going to buy myself the same way. I'm paying 80% or whatever the cash flow to practice. I'm buying it. I'm going to have 12. And then I'll do an EBITDA times X. And, I'm about low debt. I'm about keeping your debts low. I'm not about seeing some of these guys' portfolios, Howard, is absolutely insane. I'm not threatened by them as a practitioner. I've never been affected by them. I think you can compete with them, as a solo practitioner. A lot of doctors will, get the fee-for-service model. I want to be fee-for-service, and they don't market as aggressively. I spend $12,000 a month in marketing every month, and it yields returns. Consistency breeds volume. That's what Marc has always told me since I was a young chap, and it works. And, I don't mind even some of their marketing. I have doctors that say, well, I don't want to do some of those specials and different things like that. I'm like, you know what? Bring them through the door. And it's your job to create the value and sell dentistry. Provide a high-end fee-for-service deal, but make it affordable. And, when you're talking about cosmetics and reconstruction and stuff, Howard, I do a ton of reconstruction and implants and cases that are big. And it's because of the way I market, I compete with the DSOs, but I also market above and beyond in different levels of marketing. So, I have a low-grade marketing that a lot of, tons of mailers and different things go out, but I also have the higher-end marketing that I've always had. So I'm kind of a hybrid type of practice. So, a lot of doctors are a little bit nervous about, well, can I compete? Yeah, you can. You can buy a better, like you were saying about those cosmetic dentists that only do veneers. They don't do implants. They don't do grafting. They don't do, general dentistry anymore. Well, expand your basket, and, I think you'll be just fine. I don't think I'm not worried about the DSOs. They will probably always be around. Some will implode, some won't.
Well, what I see a lot of times is from a young age, my dad used to say to me, Howard, cash flow is everything, period. So, James will, of course, say to me, well, Pops, you do have to have production before you can worry about cash flow, correct? But nevertheless, cash flow is everything, period. So if they're buying practices at the top of the market, and maybe they're funding 80% at first and then 20% over the next couple of years, maybe they have the sellers staying on for a couple of years. That is part, I guess, of our industry today, or of our profession today in dentistry, is that the DSOs, was a chain and now is DSOs. However, you do see that in the last year, more graduates went to work for people or went to work in DSO/chain or sole proprietor practices because they like the convenience of coming in the morning. They are given their schedule. They leave at 4:30 or 5 o'clock, and they don't have to worry about billing and collections, HR, financing, marketing, anything. So I think that that is part of the trend that we're seeing. But I still think that there will always be a market for a good dentist that serves his patients well, markets well, and does the right things. I think that that market will always exist. Will it change over time? Most likely, but it'll always exist.
You guys, I really wish you would do dentistry a huge favor. There's a thread that just got started a couple days ago on Dental Town. It's called So Burned Out, Lost Drive and Motivation, Tired of Dentistry. It's already at 1,600 comments with 40,474 views. And as I read that, and it just kind of makes me sad. These guys are pouring their hearts out. And being in the rodeo for 30 years, I know so much of this is because their house is not in order. They're upside down in debt. I mean, they're even talking about it, and I wanted to make a light joke on it. I'm going to post after we get off. I'm going to say, well, I'd rather be a dentist than a chef because everything they make just turns to poop. And, trying to put something funny. But I think you guys could get a ton of traction and leads, and you can just go in there and so it doesn't sound like a commercial. Just say, hey, just got done doing a podcast with Howard. But, how much of this is about debt? How much of this are you upside down? Are you in over your head? But it's on today's active topic. So burned out, lost drive and motivation, tired of dentistry. I mean, it's just a pile on. I mean, it's just a pile on. All these guys and gals on there just pouring their hearts out about how, they're just in over their head. And some of them need help, and you guys could do so much. James, you said you spend $12,000 a month on marketing. I think it is so amazing how, the average dental office, what do you think the average dental office adjusts off of production for PPOs every month? How much money?
Oh, Jesus. I don't know, about 30%.
Yeah. So
UCR.
Yeah. So they don't blink at signing up for every PPO and having $20,000-$30,000 a month in adjusted production. But they won't even think about spending $1 on advertising to the other half of America who doesn't even have dental insurance. Why are they so... The average PPO price is 42% below the doctor's usual and customary fee. Why do they not blink at lowering their price 42% signing a PPO, but won't spend, like you do, $12,000 a month on marketing?
I would ask the same question. I'm like, it's the easiest path.
So what percent? What percent of is ideal for marketing? You talked about labor. You want it to be 30% of your lowest month's collection. That should be your budget going 12 months forward. So you're always going to be 30% max and fall below it all the time. You talked about supplies. You like at 5%. What do you think advertising expense should be?
Well, minimum at least 5%. I like to go into growth. I mean, my practice does about 2.7, 2.8 consistently, and it's in growth mode.
And how many associates do you have?
I have 2.
So three docs basically doing $1 million each.
Yeah.
And are those docs partners or employees?
Actually, they both have offers. They could buy in at any time. It's up to them. I run more of a group. I used to own multiple practices, but with Dr. 360 and the things that have been done, I actually sold all of them in about a year ago. I kept my biggest one that I've had for 14 years, and my team has been with me for a long time. So, I kind of just have a group model. I don't. A lot of doctors like, well, you have a problem with them buying in? No, I don't have a problem. My practice is paid for. I don't owe any debt on any of the stuff that I have. It's kind of like one of my buddies told me that he does the same model. And yes, I own 100% of a $2.8 million operation. Well, we actually, I don't mind any of them buying in. That's perfectly fine because I can take my money and I can roll it into something else. But, when you're in growth mode, and you're selling, you're like, hey, listen, we got we about 95 new patients a month. The doctors are loaded. Let's bring in another guy. Suddenly maybe my 100%, if I sold 50% of it, maybe my 50% in the year would be worth more than my 100% was if I didn't sell it. So I always like to sell at a certain time. I had a buddy of mine that said the same thing. He owned 100% of $1 million practice. And his buddies were like, why are you selling half of it? He goes, because I'm growing. So he sold half of it to his partner. And 2 years later, he was doing 2.6. Well, his 50% ownership is now worth more than his 100% ownership back in the day. So I'm about always growing. And what I see a lot of the times is for the practices we deal with is they're not spending any money on marketing. Half of ease, no internal marketing methods, no relationship building. It all comes from everything else.
Where are you spending your money in marketing? What's working? What's not?
I do a lot of mailers. I think with I put personalized pictures of my team on them, so when people see it, they actually see my team. I think that's important. I don't do photographs that are professional, that they're like posed, like glamour shots. We're pretty chill. We're in the lobby and we're just take a picture so they can see the realistic connection of the people that they're going to come to. I do a lot of introductory prices as a thank you to come and try us out. I don't do discounts. I also put cases of my own cases on there, before and afters type of thing, that are just crazy. You have other options,
There's such a bias with millennials on marketing because when you listen to people like, say, Scott Holloway at NYU School of Business, when you look at the data-driven business minds, research-driven, they're always in grad departments. Like my favorite book, Good to Great. What's that guy's name? Jim Collins. I mean, he wrote Good to Great, Built to Last, How the Mighty Fall. But he's a university professor with a grad department, and his graduate students and him will spend 5 years of data to write a book. But when you look at marketing, the number one marketing is still direct mail and emails. I mean, even if an email blast only has a 3, 4, 5% open rate, but when you're a millennial and you grew up on Facebook, they just keep wanting to do Facebook, and it's like, really, you think grandma who's going to have her denture replaced with all-on-4 implants is going to find you on Facebook? You know who's going to find you on Facebook? A bunch of millennials who drink fluoridated water and brush their teeth with a fluoridated dentifrice and had sealants, and they don't need anything. And direct mail, and even with direct mail with a miserable 1% return rate, my God, if you mail to your whole damn zip code, you're blasting. And email blasts, I mean, they got to be collecting all their patients' emails. And I mean, I
absolutely.
I have 8,000 emails at my dental office, and my God, so I know they just want to. I know they're fixated on the four horsemen, Amazon, Facebook, Apple, and Google. But I take a direct mail and an email blast any day over a Facebook boost or a Google AdWord.
Oh, absolutely. I think there's two parts to it: is taking care of the people you have in your practice to stimulate referrals internally, and then external to bring them in. And it's a combination of a lot of different marketing methods that we use. But, I see a lot of doctors that are so addicted to marketing external that they don't actually take care of their home base. So they're losing 50 out of the door, but then they're bringing in 50, so the practice is not in growth. So I like the email stuff.
I want to ask another question that I see. Oh my God, we went over. We're way into overtime. You guys got to run, or can I ask 2 more overtime questions?
You certainly can, Howard.
Okay. When every dental consultant I've podcasted doesn't think too much about associates. They say, when they go into a practice, the owner dentist will attempt the molar endo, will attempt removing the wisdom teeth, will attempt all this stuff. And the associates just refer to an endodontist, refer to the oral surgeon for wisdom teeth, refer out to beta. And, when they go to seminars, the owner doctor is viciously taking notes while the associate is surfing Facebook and doesn't come back from lunch. And these chains that are building up, these DSOs with a bunch of associate employees, do you think the associate mentality is very different than the owner occupied dental office as far as production?
I think so. I think when a person, I mean, just at least from the colleagues that I've met, when they go work for a DSO, the day they walk in is the day they're thinking about what they're going to do after they leave this job. Make sense? You know, I mean, with my doctors, they're part of my group, and to me, they're my partners. Now, they may not be an owner right off the bat from a physicality paperwork, but I sure as hell treat them like one. And I don't like the term associate because, you know, I've worked jobs in the past from all careers, and I remember clocking in and clocking out, and I hated those jobs. I was always, when is it going to be done? Dude, you know, I like to create a sense of ownership for the doctors that work with me. They're my colleagues, and I think it's the leadership of the doctors that have associates. They're, you know, they treat them like associates. You know.
I only see successful associates when they're working in an office where the owner doctor is full-time, Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, you know, full-time, totally committed. Then the associates get mentored, they get motivated, they excel. But when I see dental offices with nobody in there as the owner, just associates, I'm not impressed by the numbers, the profitability. And I think that's why they can't go public. Gentlemen, thank you for going 16 minutes over. This is the most fun hour, 20 minutes. I'd love to talk to your attorney part. What part is she with?
She owns Farrakis Law.
They always are going to solve their problem by going to Coyce. They're going to go to Spear and get a Scottsdale Center and get a CERAC machine. They're going to go learn Lanap and buy $135,000 laser. They're going to go buy a CBCT and drop, you know, a bunch of money on implant training. They're always going to solve their upside down in debt dental disaster with spending another $100,000, $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 on all this high tech equipment. What are your thoughts on that? Is any of that a return on investment? And should any of that be bought when you're upside down in debt and you're trying to dig yourself out of debt?
No. And we see that quite a bit. I mean, I think we have two cases running right now where a year ago they just bought a CERAC, another guy bought a cone beam, the other guy bought a laser. You know, I mean, it is what it is. They thought by spending money it would get them out. You know, one guy tried to hire a consultant. Spent a ton of money on that. You know, in my experience with consultants, there's some good consultants, but I think that they, you know, they'll spend money anywhere to try to get them out. And a lot of times a consultant will come in, they'll do, you know, culture improvements, they'll do personality testing, they'll give you some tracking sheets to create the value in the systems, but they don't go into the nuts and bolts of the financial problem.
Well, I think one of the ideas there, too, is that when they buy these different things, that's fun. Whereas sitting down, truly looking at your finances, evaluating your finances with someone that knows what they're talking about and how it applies to dentistry, most likely is not going to be fun. It's like pain or pleasure. It's going to be painful when you look at that and you see that your budget for employees is way over. Or you don't need 19 employees. You need 8 good people doing the job. Or, you know, advertising is out of whack, or lab expenses are out of whack, or dental supplies, rent, whatever. That is painful to look at that and have to make changes internally. It's pleasurable when you have somebody that comes in and says, hey, you can buy this, and this is going to be fabulous for your practice. And look at all, you know, all the fine techniques and how well it's made. And yeah, we can get you in at $9.99 down, and it's going to cost you this much to eternity. But if they don't use that tool at all, it just becomes out of debt.
Well, I think it comes back, Howard, to the consultant thing, where the number one I hear is, well, this consultant said I needed to produce more. So if the ratios are off, you're like, well, we got to produce more. We got to produce more. So they suddenly like, well, I can do the CERAC and that will help my lab bill. Well, not really, unless you really know what the hell you're doing. Or I'm going to do this implant course and I can try to do. They're always thinking about what they got to do to produce more instead of coming back and thinking about. I always like to call it like you have operations and then you have your financial, and your financial should guide you what changes you need to make from an operational point of view. I talked to a consultant. She goes, well, we got to have we got to have this ratio over here. I'm like, okay, that's financial, that's theory. What are you going to do in your practice to make that happen so you have that financial change? Well, I don't know. I mean, I'm just telling him what he needs to do. I'm like, you told him that ratio of staff salaries needs to be 26%. Well, what are you going to do to make that happen? You got to change the schedule. You got to focus on it. You got to dissect it. You've got to map it out. You make the change, and then you'll hit your goal. Not always produce more. So that's usually I think that mentality of producing more means, okay, I'm going to go buy that extra machine. I'm going to go spend $50,000 and go get an implant training. And then it's like the rolling.
Yeah, then that's the difference between economic theory and an economic strategy. A theory is you need to raise production, get more new patients. But in reality, a strategy is when you make a yes or no decision. It's like, okay, you're going to bring down your labor. Show me the decision matrix of where all the questions have a yes or a no. You know?
Yeah.
Do I need less people? Yes, no. You know, make decisions, as my dad would say so eloquently, shit or get off the pot, you know. Last question. I'm being too greedy keeping you guys on. Do you like any of these dental dashboards?
I haven't actually been on a lot of dental dashboards, to be honest.
There's a lot of companies popping up. A lot of them are in Utah where they plug into your practice management computer system and pulls out a bunch of numbers to give you, a dashboard of, your production, collection, number of hygiene patients, how many got rescheduled. But that's not a big part of your secret sauce, is any dental dashboards?
No, I mean, I just kind of go old school, pull out the things I need, interpret them. I do a little things differently. A lot of doctors budget things and pay bills on a bi-monthly basis. I do a weekly budget, and I'm on target every week. All my bills are paid every week. I allocate money every week into that certain cash flow of a monthly allocation, because practices usually collect about the same every week. And so what I see a lot of doctors do is, at the end of the month, they're like, this wasn't great. Well, maybe next month will be better. And they didn't do any changes to make next month better. If there's a problem in my practice, because I do everything weekly, I will know it now. I won't know it 2 weeks when it's too late, or 2 months by the time they grabbed all the information. Oh man, I'm not doing very good.
I asked you.
So I always suggest that.
I asked you a question: do demographics matter? And you geniusly said you just prefer acquisitions. I mean, you don't have to risk anything, knowing if a dentist is needed, supply and demand, if this is going to work. Acquisitions are so much better. Yeah, are you a Monday through Friday 8 to 5, or are you big into early morning, evenings, weekends? Do hours of operation open matter?
To me, in my practice, I've had a practice where we always thought work smart, not hard. And one of my second practice I purchased was more prosthodontics and things like that. And, my old mentor used to say, hey, we can do the same amount of money in 3 days and 4, then we're going to do 3 and everybody gets a day off. Well, you know what? We ended up doing $2 million, but working 3 days a week. We're like, heck yeah. To me now in today's era, I mean, I look at what my patient base needs, and then I am able to service the hours that they want. My office is open Monday through Friday, and every other Saturday.
Monday through Friday. What are your hours Monday through Friday?
8 to 5.
8 to 5, and you're open every other Saturday at what hours?
8 to 5.
8 to
so
5?
2 Saturdays a month, we give it for convenience. And then on Thursdays, we will roll into the 7 o'clock region to give little evening hours. But, we've been requested. We've listened to our patients. Our patients have guided us. But I'm not into, I'm doing a scratch practice, so I'm just going to suddenly do these crazy hours to see that that's the magic bullet that's going to work.
The magic bullet, if there is one, is spend less than you earn. And that's not a new patient experience. It's a every patient experience. It's like focus on customer experience. When you go to work, bring it. I don't care if you're an extrovert. How many of your favorite movie stars aren't really serial axe murderer killers? They just play the part in the movie. So if you're shy and want to hide in your office, well, when you're at work, it's time to go Hollywood. And, instead of finishing a root canal and running back in your office and posting on Facebook, you should walk the patient out to the front. And I always am walking out to the waiting room, shooting the shit with the next one, the last one. If I'm ever running late, I go out there and I apologize and I blame it on the patient, you know, in a kidding, joking way. Everyone's laughing. I mean, as opposed to you hiding in your office and the next patient 20 minutes late, sitting there having a hissy fit and really stressing out your receptionist. Own it. You were late. You go out there. You go out there and tell them you're sorry. But if I had to bet on a dentist coming out of school, I'd want the chair side manner, the making me secrete dopamine, serotonin, and oxytocin, not fight or flight, adrenaline, and norepinephrine. I'd want everybody in the staff. And you know, whenever I go to my physicians, you know, it's always some window witch sitting behind a window, handing you a clipboard, not making eye contact, and window. But hey, gentlemen, seriously, we went an hour and a half. You guys are so amazing. Thank you so much for coming on my show today and talking to my homies. I just thoroughly enjoyed podcasting interviewing you.
Thank you very much, Howard. It was a pleasure to talk to you.
All right. I hope you guys have a rocking hot day.